Hello, my name is Genosis, and welcome to Not a Gamer Gaming. This is episode 1 of our Prefab Editor tutorial series. Today we're going to discuss the Prefab Editor, getting into it, navigating the creative menu, briefly discussing the environment, how to use some of the blocks and tools that you'll be using throughout all of the editing you're going to be doing. Before we begin though, my wife would nag at me if I didn't tell you to go ahead and click that like and subscribe if you haven't already, and click that notification bell so we can shovel more videos onto your face. Let's begin. Alright, so first we're going to start by entering the Prefab Editor. That could be done by clicking on Editing Tools and Level Prefab Editor. Now this is going to load, I believe, the last prefab I worked on, which may be our Asylum that you would have seen already. So no big surprises. Here we go. And yep, this is the Asylum. We're just going to take a quick peek at this area. And may as well use this as a kind of a starting point for discussing navigating the Prefab Editor, the tools and all that stuff. So what you may notice, you'll start out your flying. So you can use your normal WASD keys to navigate and fly around. Spacebar goes up, and the letter C goes down. So you can fly and then use your navigation keys to get around. You hold shift, makes you go faster just like it does sprinting in the game. Alright, now something you'll also need to know that you may or may not have played with is God mode. You can either hit Q, take off God mode, so you can walk around like a normal mortal, or I believe it's H that take you off fly mode. So you're still in God mode, you're still invulnerable, but you're no longer flying. So I believe you're always in God mode. Yeah, it looks like I'm in God mode either way. So just whichever key you prefer. Okay, so beyond this is going to navigate just as you do normally. You have your crafting menu. It's going to actually clear all this stuff so you can start from scratch. So you can craft things if you want to, but we're not going to do any of that because that just takes too darn long. That's why we're here in the Prefab Editor. Alright, so we hit Tab, and you will notice there is an extra menu option up here if you haven't used the Creative menu before. You can click on that, and this gives you every single possible block there is to place. You get all kinds of different terrain, blocks, blocks that have already been upgraded. Every block possible. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. Now you can also type to bring up any block you're looking for. So if you're looking for a plain old wood block, not wood blood, that'd be just weird. Wood block. So we got wood blocks, baseboards, different types, burnt blocks, anything that fits that criteria. So use some standard wood blocks. Okay. And you can just place them like you do normally. There is a much faster way to do this, and we'll be covering that in our next video. Right now we're just covering the basics and covering the layout and the UI. Alright, now we've shown up the creative menu. You're going to be spending a lot of time in here, so it would make sense to get accustomed to it, look up some blocks, find out what the descriptions are, what types of blocks to look for. Some blocks to keep an eye out for are ramps. Now, you used to creating these ramps in the game, all kinds of different ramp shapes and styles and textures and all that. So that's no big surprise there. Now, something that maybe not a lot of people use are wedges. You can have wedge inclines, and if I can find it quickly, there we go. There's full wedges. I'll show you the difference between those. So a wedge incline, gotta remember how to rotate things. Left click to rotate, of course. So that's a wedge incline, and this is a full wedge. See if you want to do, that's usually useful for roofs and that type of thing, and this one be more for like ramps and whatnot. Now the companion block to that would be tips. So if you want to make a complete graded edge, that will match it up perfectly. There we go. So it's going to take a lot of experimenting. There's probably literally no enough time in the day to go over every single block. But you'll notice in this build, I've used all kinds of different blocks. I believe these are all ramps. There are corner pieces. and all kinds of things like gable pieces that will match up and make roof shapes like this. Also, if we go on the inside, lots of different rotated ramps and corner pieces to make a nice smooth roof. It's gonna take a little bit of experimenting to get used to it. I know we did. So it's really just a matter of exploring the blocks and seeing what it has to offer. Now, what we'll discuss next are some of the dev tools. These you'll have in your bar almost exclusively all the time. So to access those, you click on dev blocks. And I usually just type dev to jump straight to them. Oops, hit the space bar. All right, so some of the ones of importance would be the dev super digger. This is the perfect weapon for destroying blocks. Instant kill, any distance. Okay, well, I'll get some more wood blocks to replace those. Okay, so you'll be using that a lot if you made some mistakes, tried some stuff out. Those are mistakes you can erase quite easily. Now, another one is the dev paintbrush. Now, this is like your standard paintbrush, except it doesn't use any paint. You have access to all the materials. Let's say, get some different style wood here. You can use your paintbrush to paint one at a time. And you're holding R to bring up this radial menu. Hold R and you can have access to some of the other things you may not be used to. So we have the paint roller. This will shotgun blast you can see a hit in the distance. I believe it's a 3x3 square. Let's go over here to the wall. Get out of go mode here. There we go. There you go. Actually, that's hold on. Yeah. Oh, darn it. Back to that. I think it's only 3x3. Oh, or is it 4x4? I think it's 4x4. So yeah, the paint roller will go more at once, and that's super handy for doing large areas. Now, if you really want to go crazy, and I don't recommend using this tool very often, is the spray gun. I don't even know how many blocks this does, but Shazam. If you're doing, you may want to start with that if you're doing a lot of painting in an area, using a lot of the same texture. So bear that in mind. We also have the paint all sides. Now I do like this one. Let's check out what this does. Over here. Okay, let's say you're painting and you want to paint this entire block like it's one complete texture. You paint one side. There we go. And it paints, oh hold on, I didn't even select it. Paint all sides, there we go. Bam. Paints all the sides all at once. So that's handy for getting behind certain blocks. You know, I would recommend painting most of your structures that way, unless you're doing multifaceted things. Like for this, absolutely use your multi-painting for this, because you're doing all the same texture. But if you're doing inside of a wall, you know, one block of a ceiling, maybe another floor, so you don't want to do that. That's going to mess you up. Okay. So that is the paintbrush. Oh, you can also do texture picking if you want to quickly copy other textures. So go hold texture picker, and then you'll always set your painting brick. Very handy if you're doing an area, you can copy textures from all different locations. Yep, copy block. Now, actually, this is a cool feature. I didn't realize it was actually on the paint menu. Okay, let's say if you have a block and you want more of them. You can use the paintbrush, hold R, you can copy the block. Now this not only copies the block, it also copies the textures that you've painted onto it. So super handy if you're looking to mass create a bunch of blocks. Again, I know there's a faster way, but we'll get to that. All right, there is actually another quicker way to do that. If you're using a mouse that has a scroll button, I'm sure all you do, that has a middle click to the scroll button. Your middle mouse button click, actually let's get rid of that because we already grabbed it. Middle mouse button click does that as a hotkey. So if you look around, grab some brick, middle mouse button click, grab some trash cans, middle mouse button click, more trash cans. And of course dev gun, erase all those mistakes. Be careful though, we're using this dev gun, it goes off if you hold really fast. So we just want to destroy one block and, oops, yeah, Does a nice job of that. Okay, so that covers the basic dev tools. There are the ones. The dev instant pistol will kill zombies. You won't use that in the prefab editor. The super wrench is used for upgrading. The rest of the stuff you're probably not going to be using much of any at all. It's all be gameplay testing. Okay, now some of the other things that you might be doing will involve the actual UI itself. So you hit escape, and you'll notice you have a whole set of tools over here. Okay, now some of the stuff you can control the day and time, so you control what day it is, time of night, and I really like doing this for prefab editing. So you can really set a mood. Really handy for that. Playtest would take your current build and set up an environment that you can play it in. It'll give you a trader, a chest with some basic items. We'll cover that later, but just to let you know what the button does. This is hotkey to letter H, like I was discussing before. Puts you in fly mode. Oops. And this will put you in God mode. All these other things you don't have to worry too much about right now. There's some level tools. Now, this is handy for toggling on different views. So you can show the area that's around a prefab. You can click on and off if you have a free hand. I don't recommend holding an item when you do that. It'll still work, but it'll mess things up. Like if you have a dev gun, if you're not selecting it, you'll end up firing. So just keep a free hand. So that selects it. In order to select different builds, that's usually more used in world editing. So show that off. We can also show sleeper volumes. Now, we'll discuss that again in later detail, but this shows where all the areas are set up where zombies are going to spawn. And sleeper X-ray will show you where all the zombies are going to spawn. So if you select an area, hold on, inside a block, there. You can actually see where all the zombie spawns are. It's really handy for getting a good dispersal, getting a bird's eye view of the place. Okay, so that's sleeper X-ray and sleeper volumes. All right. Now the other handy thing that I tend to use a lot is the undo button. So let's copy a texture here that I don't want. Shotgun blast that, make a huge mistake. Oh, that's awful. Why would I do such a thing? So on the level tools, there is an undo button. Don't recall how many it saves, but I would recommend not doing more than a few actions without expecting to not be able to undo it. Redo, of course, just redoes what you've previously undone. Now, on the second level tools option, you can click Show Ground Level. Now, this puts a little checkerboard down. This is handy to tell the mixer, to tell where the ground is. So when it places this randomly in a world, it knows how to match it up to the rest of the terrain. Now, you can manipulate that by moving the ground up and down. Just try to match it up level like this. So it should be, oh, that's actually too high. Move it down. There. It should be a level plane with the ground. Actually, I think I saved it one block too high. Oopsie. Yeah, so that's handy for that. You can leave it on or off. You don't need it once you already set it. You can actually even move the entire prefab up or down. Yeah, I would recommend, that's again maybe easier if you want to add some blocks underneath if you're already at the bottom of the prefab world. But I would recommend just using the ground level up or down if that's all you're changing it for. Showing bounds, same thing. It shows you the bounds of the POI. And update bounds. What that means is that if you've expanded your area or you started cropping out some of it, like, oh, I guess I don't need this much ground, you can cut that out, delete all the blocks. When you click Update Bounds, it's going to automatically detect if there's any empty rows or columns of blocks that do not need to be there, and it'll automatically trim it for you so you don't need to have extra blocks. If you had an extra row of space, like, hold on, this is something we'll cover later, selection editing. If this was a little wider, you'll see this area. Actually, let me hide ground so it's more clear. This area is a gap. If you saved it like this and you put it into the world and the mixer, like the random generated worlds, try to place it, you'll have a big old ugly gap right here, and you don't want that. So you click update bounds, it'll trim it for you. Nice and clean. Now, some of the other buttons, might cover this later, but I'll just show you the buttons anyways. This creates a thumbnail, so when you're in the prefab editors, you can see a picture of the POI or the build that you're working on. Now, an imposter is when you're looking at a building from a distance, you can see building from far, far away. Now, an imposter is a very, not two-dimensional, but it's a very flat, non-detailed mesh that it is not very heavy to load. So it's not a bunch of blocks. It's basically one picture or snapshot, a three-dimensional snapshot of the POI, so it doesn't have to render every single hundreds or thousands of blocks that you've placed. Very handy for performance. So if you're looking far away, that's why you might notice that if you destroyed a building, that it's still there, but when you get close, it disappears. You're just simply looking at the mesh or the imposter. Now, prefab properties are things you can use to categorize your build. So it's rural, or you can have it make sure you can show up in like wilderness, that type of thing. So it basically categorizes it, so when the mixer decides where to put it, this will help categorize it as well as sort it in the prefab viewer. Now, I don't use strip textures, strip internal textures, but if we did that, it would look very ugly, and we don't want to do that. So we just, I believe undo would work for that. No, that sucks. Don't push that button. All right, prefab browser. These are all the prefabs that the game has to offer. These are the prefab thumbnails, and you can load them in and take a look at any time. Discard changes. I'm not going to mess that up. Oh, wow, this is tiny. I'm used to working on a large build. So you can load prefabs, see a quick snapshot of what they look like, and let's help navigate them. Okay. All right, that is all I'm going to cover for now. We kind of looked, just to recap, we discussed the getting into the prefab editor, the environment, the creative menu, as well as the navigation for all the different tools you'll be using. Some you use more than others, some are more advanced, that hell even I haven't played with, like physic actives. That's all gameplay testing stuff that we won't bother to touch. We also covered our dev tools. Now there's one thing, now that I'm thinking of, that I'd like to cover back in the creative menu. I'm sorry for putting this out of order, but by default you're looking at all blocks. You can actually look at categorized. So you can look at building, decor, outdoor, terrain, construction, deconstruction, loot, and level design. Some subcategories like frames and blocks, foliage, trees, crops, and under decor, especially important, we're looking at doors and hatches and windows. Handy to go through this to kind of filter out some of the things you're looking for. Or you can go through items. But you probably want to use too much of that because that's not a lot part of the prefab editing. Alright, just wanted to add that one in because I'd nearly forgotten. Alright, that is our first episode of the prefab editor. Very basic, getting into just the environment, the controls, the type of things you can expect and to use later. On our next episode, we're going to discuss selection, filling, and editing, and some copy and pasting tricks, which will save you hours of time. I am not kidding. Placing one block after another is tedious. You can do something fun like that and fill in whole sections. We're going to cover that next time, those little T's. See how awesome that quickly that was? All right. Thank you very much for watching. This was Genosis, and again, a reminder, click subscribe, notify, and like the videos. They help us out a great deal. That way we can keep getting content to you whenever we come out with it, and it'll also help grow our channel, and that's great if you want to see more of us. All right, thanks, and I'll see you next time.